decided I wanted to be fancy today because, why the hell not? This is my first weekend back from my trip, so I'm really just using it to relax and do whatever the hell I want. So, oh goodness. Oh my gosh, why do I keep kicking my dang stand? Okay. Let's do some reading. Make sure my water bottle. Nothing falls off of my bedside table. Alrighty. It's not going to open on the right thing because I've been reading fan fiction on my Kindle. Rereading. Okay. Here we are. I even put a bookmark there just in case I lost it somehow. Alright. Chapter 5. East. The new soldiers of the High Sea Guard had been allowed to spend their last hours in Cape Hisson in whatever way they chose. Most of them had gone to bid farewell to their friends. At the 9th hour of night, they would set off by palanquin to the capital. The scholars had already left on the ship to Feather Island. Ishari had not stood on deck with the others to watch Seiki disappear. They'd been close for years. Tane had nursed Ishari through a fever that had almost killed her. Ishari had been like a sister when Tani first bled, showing her how to make plugs out of paper. Now they might never see each other again. If only Ishari had studied harder, given more of herself to her training, they could have been riders together. I don't think that's how it works, but okay. For now, Tane had to turn her mind toward another friend. She had kept her head down as she wove through the clamor of Cape Hisson, where dancers and drummers were out to celebrate Choosing Day. Children skipped past, laughing, painted kites flying above them. Streets heaved with people. They mopped at their faces with flat woven linen. As Tane dodged merchants peddling trinkets, she breathed in the spice of incense, the scent of rain on sweat on skin, and the waft of sea-fresh fish. Ooh, I like that. A little bit of a alliteration there at the end. Is that what it's called? Okay, is this blocking the light to my face? I might have to turn on the ring light. I didn't think this through. Yeah, I look a little weird and dark. Especially with the bookshelf being so light next to me. Okay, I think that's fine. Because I'd have to turn on my computer and then plug in the ring light. I didn't do that beforehand because I was like, oh, I won't need the ring light. It's bright enough. Oh, lordy. Okay. She listened to the tinsmiths and traders calling out and the gasps of delight as a tiny yellow bird warbled a song. This might be the last time she walked in Cape Hisson, the only city she'd ever known. It had always been a risk to come here. The city was a dangerous place, where apprentices might be tempted to act in ways that would corrupt them. Okay. There were brothels and taverns, card games, and cockfights, recruiters sent to press them into piracy. I mean, that does sound kind of exciting. Tane had often wondered if the houses of learning had been built so close to all this as a test of will. Probably, because old people seem to like that kind of stuff. I mean, old people in power seem to like making those kind of tests. At least in fantasy worlds, mostly. When she reached the inn, she let out her breath. There were no sentinels. "Excuse me," she called through the bars. A tiny girl came to the gate. When she saw Tane in the blue tunic of the High Sea Guard, the child knelt at once and set her forehand between her hands. "I'm looking for the Honorable Susa," Tane said gently. "Would you fetch her for me?" The girl scurried back into the inn. Nobody had ever bowed to Tane that way. She'd been born in the impoverished village of Ampiki, on the southern tip of Seiki, to a family of fisherfolk. One crisp winter day, the fire had sparked in the nearby forest and swallowed almost every house. Tane had no memory of her parents. She'd only avoided sharing their death because she'd chased a butterfly out of the house to the sea. Most foundlings and orphans washed up in the land army, but the butterfly had been interpreted by a holy woman as an intervention from the gods, and it was decided that Tane must be trained as a rider. I feel like there's like a dark spot here. That might just be my hair. I can always kind of edit this. I could bring it closer to me, but I don't think that would make that big of a difference. Oh well, you're not here for the video quality, I assume. This is my spare phone. I don't have a camera. Sousa came to the gate in a robe of white silk richly embroidered. Richly broidered? My bad. Her hair poured loose over her shoulders. Tane, she slid the gate aside. We must talk. Tane recognized the notch in her brow. They slipped into the alley beside the house, where Sousa opened her umbrella and held it over them both. He's gone. Tane wet her lips. The outsider? Yes. Sousa looked nervous. She was never nervous. There was gossip in the market earlier. A pirate ship was sighted off the coast of Cape Hisson. The sentinels looked all over the city for smuggled freight, but when they left they had found nothing. They searched in Orissima, Tane realized, and Sousa nodded. Did they find the outsider? No, but there is nowhere to hide there. Sousa glanced toward the street, her eyes reflecting its lantern light. He must have escaped while the sentinels were distracted. No one could cross the bridge without the sentinels noticing. He must still be there. The man must be half ghost if he can hide himself so well. Sousa tightened her grip on the umbrella. Tane, do you think we should still tell the honored governor about him? Tane had been asking herself the same question ever since the ceremony. I told Roos we would collect him, but perhaps if he stays hidden in Orissima, he'll be able to avoid the sword and slip away on the next ship back to Mentendon. Sousa went on. They might mistake him for a legal settler. He was no older than us, Tane, and perhaps not here by choice. I have no desire to condemn him to death. Then let us not. Let him make his own way. What of the red sickness? He had none of the signs, and if he is still in Orissima, and I cannot think it otherwise, the sickness cannot go far. Tane spoke quietly. Further association with him is too much of a risk, Sousa. You took him somewhere safe. What happens now is up to him. But if they find him, will he not tell them about us? Sousa whispered. Who would believe him? Sousa took a deep breath, and her shoulders dropped. She looked Tane up and down. It seems all the risk was worthwhile. Her smile made her eyes sparkle. Was choosing day everything you imagined? The need to talk had been welling up for hours. And more, the dragons were so beautiful, Tane said. Did you see them? No, I was asleep, Sousa admitted. She must have been awake all night. How many riders will there be this year? 12. The honored unceasing emperor has sent 2 great warriors to raise our numbers. I have never seen a lacustrine dragon. Are they very different to ours? They have thicker bodies and one more toe. It would be a privilege to ride with any of them. Tane pressed closer under the umbrella. I must be a rider, Sousa. I feel guilty for wanting so much, when I have already received so many blessings, but it has been your dream since you were a child. You have ambition, Tane. Never apologize for that. Sousa paused. Are you afraid? Of course. Good. Fear will make you fight. Don't let a little shit like Tarosa get the better of you, whoever his mother is. Oh, I love it. Tane gave her a scolding look, but smiled. Now, you must hurry. Remember, no matter how far from Cape Hisson you fly, I will always be your friend. And I yours. The gate to the inn slid open, making them both start. Sousa, the girl called, you need to come inside now. Sousa glanced toward the house. I must go. She looked back at Tane and hesitated. Will they let me write to you? They must. Tane had never known any commoner to maintain a friendship with a sea guardian, but she prayed they would be the exception. Please, Sousa, be careful. Always. Her smile quivered. You won't miss me so much. When you soar above the clouds, we will all seem very small down here. Wherever I am, Tane said, I am with you. Sousa had risked everything for a dream that was not hers. That sort of friendship was something not found more than once in a lifetime. Some might not find it at all. The space between them was fraught with memory, and their faces were no longer damp only from rain. Perhaps Tane would return to Cape Hisson to guard the eastern coast, or perhaps Sousa could visit her, but for once in her life nothing was certain. Their paths were about to pull apart, and unless the dragon willed it, they might never meet again. If anything happens, if anyone names you in relation to the outsider, come with all speed to Ginura, Tane said softly. Come and find me, Sousa. I will always keep you safe. My heart. Okay, I think I'm gonna move this a little bit. Okay, that's a little better. This Band-Aid is coming apart and it's bothering me. Where are my scissors when I need them? Ah, there's some over here. There we go. Okay, that's vanished into the void. I need to do yoga and try to sit better. Okay. In a cramped excuse for a workroom in Arissima, a lantern guttered as Nicolai Roos held a file into its light. Oof, dear God. I can't say words. The stained label read kidney ore. It was all he could do to keep Sulyard from his mind, but the surest way to manage it was to lose himself in his work. Not that he was getting much work done, great or otherwise. He was perilously low on ingredients, and his alchemical equipment was as old as he was, but he wanted one more stab at this before he wrote yet again for supplies. The governor of Cape Hassan was sympathetic, but often checked in his generosity by the warlord, who seemed to know everything that happened in Saiki. The warlord was almost mythical. His family had taken power after the imperial house of Nozikin had been destroyed in the Great Sorrow. All Nicolais really knew about the man was that he lived in a castle in Genura. Every year, the viceroy of Arissima would be taken there in a locked palanquin to pay tribute, offer gifts from Mentendon, and receive gifts in return. Nicolais was the only person in the trading post who had never been invited to join her on the journey. His fellow Ments were civil to his face, but unlike the rest of them, he was here because he was in exile. The fact that none of them knew why did not endear them to him. Sometimes he wanted to unmask himself just to see their faces, to tell them that he was the alchemist who had convinced the young Queen of Innis that he could brew her an elixir of life, removing any need for a marriage or an heir. Oh, interesting. That he was the wastrel who had used Berthnet money to prop up years of guesswork, experiments, and debauchery. How horrified they would be. I keep forgetting that this ring gets stuck in my hair. I once put a little bit of sugru around here, and it lasted me for quite a while, and then it fell off. My part never seems to want to stay, you know, straight. Okay. How horrified they would be. How scandalized by his dearth of virtue. Dearth. I think that's how you pronounce that. Lack, I'm assuming, or, you know. They would have no idea that even when he had made his way to Innis 10 years ago, a walking tinderbox of pain and anger. Ooh, I like that. He'd remained faithful in some hidden chamber of his heart to the tenets of alchemy. Distillation, ceration, sublimation. These were the only deities that he would ever praise. They would have no idea that while he had sweated at the crucible, certain he could discover a way to set a body in the prime of its youth, he had also been trying to melt the knife of grief that had been buried in his side. Okay, I love that. That's getting a highlight. No, not that part. He'd also been trying to melt the knife of grief that had been buried in his side. Oof. I love a good poetic sentence. Can you let me highlight this, please? Not that it really matters, but, you know, I'd like to highlight it. Thank you. A knife that had finally led him away from the crucible, back to the comfort and oblivion of wine. Poor guy. Oh, man. Oh, I went back a page instead of going forward. Or, I wasn't supposed to go forward at all yet. This one just seems to be longer than the others, probably because it's on its own. On its own, they don't stay in the curl very well. Or maybe I just didn't put enough, didn't spray it as much as the other pieces. Usually, though, when I break them up too much, they start to unwind faster. Okay, I should stop bothering with my hair, but that strand is just bothering me. Okay. He had not succeeded in either venture, and for that Sabran Berthnet had had made him pay. I need to slow down. I feel like if I move a little closer to the light, it'll be a little better. Now with his life, Leovart had told him he ought to be grateful for that so-called kindness from her enmity. No, Sabran had not taken his head, but she had taken everything else. Now he was trapped on the edge of the world, surrounded by people who despised him. Let them whisper. If the experiment worked, they would all be knocking at his door for the elixir. Tongue pinched between his teeth, he poured the kidney ore into the crucible. It might as well have been gunpowder. Before he knew it, the draft was seething. It bubbled over onto the table and belched a thunderhead of evil-smelling smoke. Niklaus peered desperately into the crucible. All that was left was a tar-black residue. With a sigh, he rubbed the soot from his eyeglasses. His creation looked more like night soil than the elixir of life. Kidney ore was not the answer. Then again, the powder may have not been kidney ore at all. Panaya had bought it from a merchant on his behalf, and merchants were not renowned for their honesty. A nameless one take all of this. He would have given up on making the damned elixir if not for the fact that he had no means of escaping this island, but to buy his way back to the west with it. What's happening with me today? Of course, he had no intention of giving it to Sabran Berethnet. She could hang. But he made it known. But he made it known to any ruler that he had, I need to slow down. But if he made it known to any ruler that he had it, they would see to it that he was brought back to Mentendon and allowed to live out the rest of his life in luxury and wealth. And he would see to it that Sabran knew what he could do, and when she came to him pleading for a taste of eternity, there would be no sweeter pleasure than denying it to her. Still, he was a long way from that happy day. He needed the costly substances that long-dead lacustrine rulers had sought to stretch their lives, like gold and orpiment and rare plants. Let's see if Kindle will tell me what that is. A bright yellow mineral consisting of arsenic trisulfide formerly used as a dye and artist's pigment. Oh, interesting. Orpiment. Even though most of those rulers had poisoned themselves trying to live forever, the irony. There was a chance that their recipes for the elixir might spark a new flame of inspiration. I feel like that's a pretty slim chance, but at this point I feel like boy only has slim chances. Everything is getting stuck. My hair is getting stuck on my hands. Time to write to Leovart yet again and ask him to flatter the warlord with some pretty letter. Only a prince might be able to coax him into handing over his gold to be melted. Niklaus finished his cold tea, wishing it was stronger. The viceroy of Orissima had barred him from the alehouse and limited him to 2 cups of wine each week. His hands had trembled for months. Months? I thought, well, I guess withdrawal might take that long to get over. They shook now, but not with the need for oblivion. Oh, okay. There was still no sign of Trium Solyard. The bells clanged in the city again. The sea guardians must be on their way to the capital. The other apprentices would be packed off to Feather Island, a high isle in the Sundance Sea, where all known wisdom about dragonkind was stored. Niklaus had written to the governor of Cape Hisson several times, requesting permission to travel there, but had always been rebuffed. Feather Island was not for outsiders. Dragons might yet be the key to his work. They could live for thousands of years. Something in their bodies must allow them to keep renewing themselves. They were not what they had once been. In Eastern legend, dragons had possessed mystical abilities, like shape-shifting and dream-making. The last time they exhibited these powers was in the years following the end of the Great Sorrow. That night, a comet had crossed the sky, and while worms the world over had fallen into a stone-like sleep, the Eastern dragons had found themselves stronger than they had been in centuries. Now their powers had dwindled again, and yet they lived on. The elixir incarnate. It might not be compatible with humans, buddy. Have you ever thought about that? Now my face is too bright because the rest of the stuff is too dark. Does this help? Does this help? I don't think it does. Whatever. I do like this necklace, though. Very pretty. You can't really see the flash. You'll be able to. Ah! but it's a labradorite. It has a beautiful purple. There we go. It's a gorgeous purple flash. I am obsessed with it. It is so pretty. Okay. Not that the theory would help Nikolai's much. On the contrary, the realization had driven his work into a dead end. The islanders saw their dragon as sacred. Their dragons as sacred. Consequently, trade in any substance from their bodies was outlawed on pain of a particularly slow and hideous death. Only pirates risked it. With gritted teeth and a pounding headache, Nikolai limped from his workshop. As he stepped onto the mats, he gaped. Trium Solyard was sitting by the hearth. He was soaked to the skin. By the saints, codpiece! Nikolai stared. Solyard! The boy looked wounded. You should not take the saint's intimate parts in vain. A codpiece is just a piece of clothing, buddy. Hold your tongue. Nikolai snapped, heart pounding. My word, but you are a lucky wretch. If you found a way out of this place, say it now. I tried to leave, Solyard said. I managed to evade the guards and slip out of the house, but more were by the gate. I got into the water and hid beneath the bridge until the eastern knight left. The chief officer is no knight, you fool. Nikolai let out a growl of frustration. Saint, why did you have to come back? What did I do to deserve you turning up to threaten what little I have left of an existence? He paused. Actually, don't answer that. Solyard was silent. Nikolai stormed past him and set about lighting a fire. Dr. Roos, Solyard said after a hesitation, why is Orishima so closely guarded? Because outsiders cannot set foot in Seiki on pain of death, and the Seikinese, in turn, cannot leave. Nikolai hooked the kettle over the hearth. They let us stay here so they can trade with us and absorb odds and ends of mentish knowledge, and so we can give the warlord at least a hazy impression of the other side of the abyss, but we cannot go beyond Orishima or speak heresy to the Seikinese. Heresy like the six virtues? Precisely. I also understandably suspect outsiders of carrying the draconic plague, the red sickness, as they call it. If you had taken the trouble to do your research before you came here. But they would surely listen if we asked for help, Solyard said with conviction. Oh, honey. What makes you think that? Oh my goodness. Indeed, while I was hiding, I had a thought that I might simply tell them, let them find me, so they might take me to the capital. They're not going to take you to the capital, buddy. He seems not to see the appalled look Nikolai dealt him. I must speak with the warlord, Dr. Roos. If you would only hear what I have come to... As I said, Nikolai said tartly, I have no interest in your mission, Master Solyard. But virtudom is in peril. The world is in peril, Solyard pressed. Queen Sabran needs our help. In terrible danger, is she? He tried not to sound too hopeful. Life-threatening? Yes, Dr. Roos, and I know of a way to save her. The richest woman in the West, venerated by 3 countries, needs a squire to save her. Fascinating. Nikolai heaved a sigh. All right, Solyard, I will indulge you. Enlighten me as to how you plan to spare Queen Sabran from this unspecified peril. By interceding with the West. Solyard looked determined. The warlord of Seiki must send his dragons to help Her Majesty. I mean to persuade him to do this. He must help Virtudom put down the draconic beasts before they fully wake. Wait, Nikolai cut in. Do you mean to say that you want an alliance between Innis and Seiki? Not just between Innis and Seiki, Dr. Roos, between Virtudom and the East. Nikolai let the words crystallize. The corner of his mouth twitched. And when Solyard continued to look grave as a sectarian, Nikolai threw back his head and laughed. Oh, this is wonderful! Glorious, he declared. Solyard stared at him. Oh, Solyard, I have had precious little entertainment at this place. In this place. Thank you. It is no joke, Dr. Roos, Solyard said, indignant. Oh, but it is, dear boy. You think that you alone can overturn the Great Edict, a law that has stood for 5 centuries, just by asking nicely. You really are young. Nikolai chuckled once more. And who is your partner in this splendid endeavor? Solyard huffed. I know you're mocking me, sir, he said, but you must not mock my lady. She is someone for whom I would die 1,000 times, whose name I cannot tell. Someone who is the light in my life, the breath in my breast, the sun to my... The girl the weird girl in the palace, I think? Yeah. Ah, yes, all right, that's sufficient. Did she not wish to come to Seiki with you? We planned to go together, but when I visited my mother in Perchling in the winter, I met a seafarer by chance. She offered me a place on a ship bound for Seiki. His shoulders hunched inward. I sent word to my love at court. I pray she understands, that she forgives me. I feel like, I can't remember much about her, but I feel like she's a bit of a fickle girl. Or no, not that she's fickle, but like she's in trouble, so... This is the problem. I'm gonna try to keep reading this more often so I don't lose bits. It had been a while since Nikolai's had indulged in a bit of court gossip. It spoke volumes for his boredom that he was all but salivating for it. He poured 2 cups of willow tea and sat on the mats, stretching his sore leg in front of him. This lady's your betrothed, I take it. My companion. A smile touched the cracked lips. We took our vows. I assume Sabran gave her blessing to the match. Sulyard flushed. We did not ask Her Majesty for permission. No one knows of it. He was braver than he looked. Sabran dealt harsh punishments to those who married in secret. It was where she differed from the late Queen Mother, who had been fond of a good love story. Your lady must be of low station if you had to marry her in secret. Nicholas mused. No, my lady is noble-born. She is as sweet as the richest honey, as beautiful as an autumn Saint enough. You're giving me a headache. One had to wonder how Sabran had kept him around without having his tongue ripped out. How old are you exactly, Sulyard? 18. A grown man, then. No, a child. He is a child. He's 10 years younger than me, pretty much. He's a baby. A bébé, if you want to say it that way. My best friend might say it. Old enough to know that not all dreams should be pursued, especially not dreams conceived on the featherbed of love. If the chief officer had found you, you would not have been taken to the governor of Cape-Hassan, not to the warlord. Nikolai sipped his tea. I will humor you again, Sulyard. If you know Sabran to be in danger, so much danger that she needs assistance from Seiki, which I doubt, then why not tell her? Sulyard hesitated. Her Majesty distrusts the East, to her own detriment, he finally said, and they are the only ones who can help us. Even when she is made aware of the danger she faces, which will no doubt be soon, her pride would never allow her to ask for Eastern aid. If I could only talk to the warlord on her behalf, Truida said she might realize that... Truida. The cup shook in his hand. Truida, he whispered. Not Truida Edceder, the daughter of Lord Ascarde. Sulyard was frozen. Dr. Roos? He began after an agony of stammering. It must be secret. Before he could stop it, Nicholas laughed again. This time it had an edge of madness. My, he cried, but you are quite the companion, Master Sulyard. First you marry the Marchioness of Zeder without permission, an act that could destroy her reputation, then you abandon her, and finally you let slip her name to a man who knew her grandsire well. He dabbed his eyes on his sleeve. Sulyard looked as if he might faint. Ah, how worthy you are of her love. What will you tell me next? That you left her great with child, too? No. Sulyard crawled toward him. I beseech you, Dr. Roos, do not expose our transgression. There's the word, I can say it. Transgression. I am unworthy of her love, but love her I do. It hurts my soul. Nicholas kicked him away, disgusted. It hurt his soul that Truida had chosen such a pail of Innish milk for a companion. That is a great insult. I love it. That's getting highlighted as well. Highlight. I won't be exposing her, I assure you, he sneered, making Sulyard weep harder. She is the heir to the Duchy of Zeder, blood of the Vatten. Let us pray that one day she weds someone with a backbone. I love this so much. I love the sass. It's not quite sass, but it's fantastic. I'm having a great time, if you can't tell. He sat back. Besides, even if I were to write to Prince Leovart to inform him that Lady Truida has secretly wed beneath her station, it would take weeks for the ship to cross the abyss. By that time, she will have forgotten you existed. Sniffing, Sulyard managed to say, Prince Leovart is dead. The High Prince of Mentendon. the only person who had tried to help Nikolai's Inarissima. That would certainly explain why he ignores my letters. Nikolais raised his cup to his lips. When? Less than a year ago, Dr. Roos, a wyvern burned his hunting lodge to ashes. Nikolais felt a pang of loss for Lievard. No doubt the Viceroy of Warissima had known the news, but chosen not to pass it on. I see, he said. Who now rules Mentendon? Prince Albrecht. Albrecht. Nikolais remembered him as a reserved young man who cared little for anything but prayer books. Though he had been of age when the sweat took his uncle Edvard, it had been decided that Lievard, Edvard's own uncle, would rule first to show tender-hearted Albrecht the way. Of course, once Lievard was on the throne, he had found excuses not to vacate it. Now Albrecht had taken his rightful place. He would need a will of iron if he meant to control Mentendon. Nikolais pulled his thoughts away from home before he could fall into them for good. Ooh. Solyard was still looking at him, face blotched with pink. Solyard, Nikolais said, go home. When the Mentis shipment arrives, stow away. Go back to Truida and run away to the Milk Lagoon. Milk Lagoon? Is that a real place? Or wherever lovers go these days. When Solyard opened his mouth, he said, trust me, you can do nothing here but die. But my task, not all of us can finish our great works. Solyard fell silent. Nikolais removed his eyeglasses and cleaned them on his sleeve. I have no love for your queen. In fact, I roundly despise her, he said, making Solyard flinch. But I doubt very much that Sabran would want an 18-year-old squire to die for her. A quake stole into his voice. I want you to leave Trium, and I want you to tell Truida, for me, to stop involving herself in matters that could undo her. Solyard dropped his gaze. Forgive me, Dr. Roos, but I cannot, he said. I must stay. Nikolais looked at him wearily. And do what? I'll find a way to put my case before the warlord, but I shall not involve you any further. Having you in my house is involvement enough for me to lose my head. Though Solyard said nothing, his jaw was set. Nikolais pursed his lips. You seem devout, Master Solyard, he said. I suggest you pray. Pray that the sentinels stay away from my house until the Mentis shipment arrives, so you have time to come to your senses on this subject. If we survive the next few days, I might just pray again myself. I love him. He's fantastic. But also, buddy, you really think you're gonna go to an official of a different country, not as an official representative, like as a non-official anything, with nothing to give you credit. You're just a random person to him. He has no idea who you are. You have no way to verify your identity. You're here in secret. And you think he's gonna take you seriously? What? I mean, he is 18, so I can understand how little planning. But still, buddy. Really? I mean, this is a fantasy novel, so I don't know. An 18-year-old might manage to beat the odds, but that seems like such a dumb way to do it. I don't think this is gonna end well for the poor guy. Ooh, you can see the flash. There it is. Oh, I love it. Okay. Oof. Alright, chapter 6. Back to the west. Oh my gosh. I forget that this is not the most comfortable place to sit for long periods of time. I don't really have that comfortable. Well, my bed is alright. I've got like a little cushion, but this chair is very flat. It's like a little floor chair. It's not very comfortable. But it is very like convenient because it's small. And I like sitting in the corner in my bookshelves. It makes me feel cozy. When she shunned the banqueting house, which was often, the Queen of Innis supped in her privy chamber. Tonight, Ede and Lenora had been invited to break bread with her, an honor customarily reserved for her 3 bedfellows. Don't make a joke. Don't make a joke. I know that's not what that means. But in my brain, I'm out here like, you know what? Good for her. Good for her. I mean, I'm pretty sure she's gay. Based on some vague stuff I remember about this book, but like, does this count as a reverse harem? Or like a harem, but for a lady? Okay, I'm gonna stop. This is not that kind of book. But, I've been reading too many, like, like transmigration comics and stuff like that. I mean, it's never really too many. If you want recommendations, I have so many. Like my favorite ones are really the ones with the revenge plots. So mostly either time travel or transmigration. The one I'm reading now that is absolutely the best that I'm going to tell you is Cheating Men Must Die. It is absolutely fantastic. I am reading it, I think, on Manga Hasu, HASU.SE, I think. That's where I read most of my comics, and I can, like, follow them and stuff. It's pretty easy to create an account. But that comic is so good. It's so good, y'all. It's fantastic. And there's so many chapters of it. I'm just, like, reading it slowly. It's got, like, arcs where the protagonist goes into different worlds. That's all I'm gonna say. It's fantastic. Anyway, let's go back to the book. Margaret had one of her headaches. Skull crusher, she called them. Probably a migraine. Poor dear. Never had one of those. Usually she refused to let them keep her from her obligations, but she must be sick with worry about Loth. Despite the summer heat, a fire crackled. Fire doesn't crack. That's a firecracker. A fire crackled in the privy chamber. So far, nobody had spoken to Ede. Sometimes she felt as if they could smell her secrets, as if they sensed she had not come to this court to be a lady-in-waiting. Honey, everyone in court has secrets. That's just how it works. Which is one reason why I would do very badly. I am not very good at keeping secrets. Or keeping my emotions from my face. I would be a disaster in a court setting. Which would be interesting to explore in anything. Anyway, as if they knew about the Priory. I don't remember what I know about the Priory. I know it was mentioned like once. Yeah, I might have to go back and read some more. When I started this, I was gonna try to do at least one video a week. So we're gonna see if I can try to get back to that now that I'm getting back into my schedule. What do you think of his eyes, Ross? Oops. Sabran gazed at the miniature in her hand. It had already been passed between the women and scrutinized from every angle. Now Rosalind Crest took it and studied it again. Roslane? I'm going to say Roslyn, because it's closest to Rosalind, which I assume is probably the name. Roslane? I don't like how that sounds. Roslyn. Roslyn? Roslyn. I'm overthinking this again. Took it and studied it again. The chief gentlewoman of the Privy Chamber, heir apparent to the Duchy of Justice, had been born only 6 days before Sabran. Her hair was thick and dark as treacle, pale and smalt-eyed. Smalt? Don't remember what that is. Let's see. Not smelt. It's copying the whole word because it's hyphenated, so it's not going to tell me what smalt means. Oh well. Always fashionably dressed, she had spent almost her whole life with her queen. Her mother had been chief gentlewoman to Queen Rosarian. They are agreeable, your majesty. Oops, sorry, I think I kicked the thing again. Rosalind concluded. Kind. I find them to be a trifle too close together, Sabran mused. They put me in mind of Dormouse. Lenora tittered in her delicate way. Better a mouse than some louder beast, Rosalind said to her queen. Best he remembers his place if he weds you. He is not the one who is descended from the saint. Sabran patted her hand. How are you always so wise? I listen to you, your majesty. But not to your grandmother in this instance, Sabran looked up at her. Lady Igraine thinks Mentendon will be a drain on Innis. And that Livelin, I'm going to say Livelin. That Livelin should not trade with Seiki. She has told me she will voice this at the next meeting of the Virtues Council. My lady grandmother worries about you. It makes her overcautious. Rosalind sat beside her. I know she prefers a chieftain of Askerdal. Oh, interesting name. He is rich and devout. Rich. A safer candidate. I can also understand her concerns about Livelin. But? Rosalind offered a faint smile. I believe it would behoove us to give this new Red Prince a chance. I agree. Katrine lay on a settle, leafing through a book of poesy. You have the Virtues Council to caution you, but your ladies to embolden you in matters such as these. Beside Ede, Lenora was drinking in the conversation in ravening silence. Mistress Durian, Sabran said suddenly, what is your opinion of Prince Albrecht's countenance? All eyes turned to Ede. Slowly she set down her knife. You ask for my judgment, Majesty? Unless there is another Mistress Durian present. Nobody laughed. The room was silent as Rosalind delivered the miniature into her hands. Ede considered the Red Prince. High cheekbones, sleek copper hair, strong brows arched over dark eyes, a hard contrast to his pallor. The set of his mouth was somewhat grave, but his face was pleasant. Still, miniatures could lie, and often did. The artists would have flattered him. He is comely enough, she concluded. Faint praise indeed, Sabran sipped from her goblet. You are a harder judge than my other ladies, Mistress Durian. Are the men of Ursur more attractive than the prince? They are different, your majesty. Ede paused, then added, less like dormice. The queen gazed at her, expressionless. For a moment Ede wondered if she had been too bold. A stricken look from Katrine only served to feed her misgiving. You have a quick tongue. I can say words. You have a quick tongue as well as light feet. The Queen of Innis reclined in her chair. We have not spoken often since your coming to court. A long time has passed. 6 years, I think. 8, your majesty. Rosalind shot her a warning glance. One did not correct the descendant of the saint. Of course, 8, was all Sabran said. Tell me, does Ambassador Urquispad ever write to you? Not often, madam. His Excellency is busy with other matters, such as heresy. Ede dropped her gaze. The ambassador is a devout follower of the dancing, your majesty. But you, of course, no longer are, Sabran said, and Ede inclined her head. Lady Arbella tells me you pray often at sanctuary. How Arbella Galen conveyed these things to Sabran was a mystery, since she never seemed to speak. The 6 virtues is a beautiful faith, majesty. Faith, majesty, Ede said, and impossible not to believe in when the true descendant of the saint walks among us. It was a lie, of course. Her true faith, the faith of the mother, blazed as strong as ever. They must tell tales of my ancestry in the Ursur, Sabran said, of the damsel especially. Yes, madam, she is remembered in the south as the most right-wise and selfless woman of her time. Cleolind Ungenu, ooh, I like that name. Cleolind Ungenu was also remembered in the south as the greatest warrior of her time, but the Innish would never believe that. They believed that she had needed to be saved. To Ede, Cleonid was not the damsel. She was the mother. Interesting. Lady Olivia tells me that Mistress Durian is a born storyteller, Rosalind said, giving her a cool look. Will you not tell us the tale of the saint and the damsel as you were taught it in the south, mistress? Ede sensed a trap. The Innish seldom enjoyed hearing anything from a new perspective, let alone their most sacred tale. Rosalind was expecting her to put a foot wrong. My lady, Ede said, it cannot be told better than it is by the sanctuarian. In any case, we will hear it tomorrow. We will hear it now, Sabran said. As more worms stir, the story will comfort my ladies. Fire crackled. Looking at Sabran, Ede felt a strange tension, as if there were a thread between them. Finally, she rose to take the chair beside the hearth, the place of the storyteller. As you wish. She smoothed her skirts. Where shall I begin? Oh! With the birth of the Nameless One, Sabran said, when the great fiend came from the Dreadmount. Katrine took the queen by her hand. Ede breathed in, studying the royal within her. If she told the true story, she would doubtless face the pyre. She would have to tell the tales she heard each day at sanctuary. Oops. A butchered tale. Half a tale. There is a womb of fire that churns beneath this world, she began. Over 1,000 years ago, the magma within it came suddenly together, forming a beast of unspeakable magnitude, as a sword takes shape within the forge. His milk was the fire within the womb. His thirst for it was quenchless. He drank until his heart was a furnace. Katrine shivered. Soon this creature, this worm, grew too large for the womb. He longed to use the wings it had given him. Having torn his way upward, he broke through the peak of a mountain in Mentendon, which is called Dreadmount, and brought with him a flood of molten fire. Red lightning flashed at the summit of the mountain. Darkness fell upon the city of Gulthaga, and all who lived there died choking on pernicious smoke. Pompeii. There was a lust in this worm to conquer all he saw. He flew south to Lacia, where the house of an Ungenu ruled a great kingdom, and settled close to their seat in Yikala. Ede took a sip of ale to wet her throat. This nameless creature carried a terrible plague, a plague no humans had ever encountered. It made the very blood of the afflicted burn, driving them mad. To keep the worm at bay, the people of Yukala sent him sheep and oxen, but the nameless one was never sated. He lusted after sweeter flesh, human flesh. And so, each day the people cast their lots, and one was chosen. That's not a word. Chosen, as a sacrifice. All was silent in the room. Lacia was ruled then by Selinu, high ruler of the house of Angenyu. One day his daughter, Princess Cleolind, was chosen as a sacrifice. Eid spoke that name softly, reverently. Though her father offered his subjects jewels and gold and pleaded with them to choose another, they stood firm. And Cleolind went forth with dignity, for she saw that it was fair. On that very morning, a knight from the Isles of Iniska was riding for Yukala. At the time these isles were riven by war and superstition, ruled by many overkings, and its people quaked in the shadow of a witch. But many good men dwelt there, sworn to the virtues of knighthood. This knight, Eid said, was Sir Gallian Berethnet, the Deceiver. That was the name he now had in many parts of Lacia, but Sabran had no idea of that. Interesting. Sir Gallian had heard of the terror that had now abided in Lacia. Abided. I guess. Just never heard that word used quite like that before. I mean, abode. But abided. I feel like it's too calm a word for so violent a stay. And he wished to offer his services to Selinu. He carried a sword of extraordinary beauty. Its name was Ascalon. When he was close to the outskirts of Yukala, he saw a damsel weeping in the shadow of the trees, and he asked why she was so afeared. "Good night," Cleolind answered. "Thou art of kind heart, but for thine own sake leave me to my prayers, for a worm doth come to claim my life." It sickened Eid to speak of the mother in this way, as if she were some swooning waif. I want to know Eid's version of the story. I want to know their version, because it sounds cool. It sounds cooler. I mean, we always love a badass woman. The knight, she pressed on, was moved by her sweet tears. By her tears. Sweet lady! There we go. He said, "I should sooner plunge my sword into my own heart than see thy blood water the earth. If thy people will give their souls to the virtues of knighthood, and if thou giveth me thy hand in marriage, I will drive this fell beast from these lands." This was his promise. He was like, "I'll save your people if they convert to my faith and you marry me. Or I'll save you." Interesting. I need more water. Those are some turns, buddy. Eid paused to gather her strength, and suddenly an unexpected taste entered her mouth. The taste of the truth. Cleolind told the knight to leave, insulted by his terms. She found herself saying, but Sir Gallian would not be deterred. Determined to win glory for himself, he... No, Sabran cut in. Cleolind agreed to his terms and was grateful for his offer. This is as I heard it in the south. Eid raised her eyebrows, even as her heartbeat stumbled. Lady Rosslyn asked me to. And now your queen commands you otherwise. Tell the rest, as the Sanctarian does. Yes, madam. Sabran nodded for her to continue. As Sir Gallian battled with the Nameless One, Eid said he was gravely wounded. Nonetheless, with the greatest courage of any man living, he found the strength to thrust his sword into the monster. The Nameless One slithered away, bleeding and weak, and tunneled back into the womb of fire, where he remains to this day. She was too aware of Sabran observing her. Sir Gallian returned with the princess to the Isles of Iniska, gathering a holy retinue of knights along the way. There he was crowned the King of Innis, a new name for a new age, and for his first decree he made the virtues of knightdom its true and sole religion. He built the city of Ascalon, named for the sword that had wounded the Nameless One, and it was there that he and Queen Cleolind were joyfully wed. Within a year the queen gave birth to a daughter, and King Gallian the Saint swore to the people that while his bloodline ruled Innis, the Nameless One could never return. A neat story, one that the Innish told again and again, but not the whole story. What the Innish did not know was that it was Cleolind, not Gallian, who had banished the Nameless One. They knew nothing of the orange tree. That's so cool! Okay, I get it. I don't remember what the name of her country is. But, since the whole book is named after it, I'm excited that we're going to learn some more. That is really cool, though. Yeah, I can't remember what the name of her country is. Either way, she, I assume, is from the Priory of the Orange Tree. And I want to know more about it, because that's cool. And I hope so. It would. Of course, you couldn't let her tell that story. It's heresy. But I love a good story, and I hate when people are just like, oh, this is against my religion, so you can't say it out loud because I'm worried that my people do not have enough faith in their own religion that they'll convert to yours. That sounds like a you problem. I'm sorry. Just coming from a Jewish person, though. Like, we never feel a need to convert. In fact, you gotta prove yourself if you want to convert. Yeah, you gotta prove yourself 3 times. I like that a little better. Make sure that you actually want it. You are sure that this is for you. Done with my own little bit of heresy, according to Christians, probably. No, I don't think they even think that anymore. Good. If they do, they're bitches. Sorry. I'm sure there are shitty people in every single religion. I know there are some Hasidic Jews that are absolutely ridiculous, and I need them to chill the fuck out. I'm cursing a lot in this video. I don't know if that means anything to YouTube. I don't think I care. I don't think I'm big enough for that to really matter. In fact, I'm not big, I'm tiny, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. I don't think I want to be popular. Like, just want some people to enjoy my stories and my weird rambling. And some people do, so let's get back to the story. I love a good tangent, though, and I hope you appreciate it, too, so, it wasn't very well thought out, though, so please don't at me. I didn't use enough protective language. These are just my opinions. I'm not saying anyone's opinions are dumb. I just don't like when knowledge starts to be restricted. That's when stuff starts to become dangerous. That's like one of the first signs of a not great society. Not safe society. When knowledge isn't safe, when some knowledge is not considered safe, that's just, it's not good. It ain't good. That starts a slippery slope. They knew nothing of the orange tree. I love that. That's a great line. 500 years later, Eid said softer, the break in the Dreadmount widened again and it let out other worms. First came the 5 High Westerns, the largest and cruelest of the draconic creatures, led by Faradell, who was the most loyal to the Nameless One. It's been raining on and off today. It's so nice. I don't know if you can hear it. Probably not. But it's nice, especially since the weather's been so hot. I'm just like, I'm not going outside, but still, it's like, especially since I'm not going outside, it's nice that it's raining outside. It's still, like, bright, you know? This is all natural light. I just opened my window. Or opened my drapes or whatever. Faradell. That's a great name. So too came their servants, the wyverns, each lit with fire from one of the High Westerns. These wyverns made their nests in the mountains and the caves, and they mated with fowl to birth the cockatrice, and with serpent to birth the basilisk, and amphipter. Is that misspelled? I feel like that's misspelled. I feel like there's an extra P in there. I don't know what that is, though. I can't remember. That sounds vaguely Greek. Well, let's see what... I can't remember what the cockatrice... Nope. I'm trying to highlight this word so you can tell me what it is, not flip to the next page. Cockatrice. Another term for a basilisk? A mythical animal depicted as a 2-headed dragon with a cock's head. Yeah, that's not a basilisk. Oh, special use heraldry. A mythical animal depicted as a 2-legged dragon or wyvern with a cock's head. That's a very interesting animal. 2-legged dragon. But it's got the head of a chicken. Yeah, that's interesting. Why would it be another term for a basilisk? Basilisk already has its own term. Like, it's much more interesting to have this weird heraldic creature. I like it. From Old French, cockatrice. From Latin, calcatrix, tracker. From calcare, to tread or track. Translating Greek. Ichnuinon. That sounds cool. Ichneumon. Well, ichneumon is, I suppose, the virgin in English. But ichneumon. Ichneumon. What a great word. I want to see what ichneumon is. See ichneumon. Well, let me click on it. It will not. I'll just try to remember that word because it's a great word. Okay. With the serpent to birth the basilisk and the amphitheater, and with ox to birth the ophitar, with wolf to birth the jaculus. I don't know those guys, so I'm gonna look. Nope, ophitar is not in the dictionary, and jaculus is not as well. How far away is my phone? I can't remember where I put it. This is the other phone. This is my spare phone. Where is my phone? Oh, here it is. You know what? We're taking a break to look at some mythological creatures. Also, my hand hurts. Ow! My pinky has been holding too much weight. This is not very comfortable to hold when I'm not propping it up on something. I'll have to think of something. Maybe I can use my lap desk next time. Okay, let's look up the amphitheater. I have to type carefully because I have a band-aid on this finger. I pulled a thingy a little too. Amphitheater. Amphitheater dragon. Don't give me fandom stuff, just give me the original. Bi-winged serpent, found in European heraldry. Oh, so it just doesn't have feet. Oh, that's a really cute photo. I don't know if you can see it. That's cute, I like that. With serpent, yeah. Okay, now let's look for the ophitar. I might just look in Wikipedia, since I'm already there. Not Ophiuchus. Ophitar? Ophitar. Nope. I guess I'll just have to Google it after all. Ophitar. I'm not Googling. I'm using DuckDuckGo. Because I like that. Huh, it doesn't have that particular spelling. Search only for Ophitar. Which pops up as the Priory of the Orange Tree and Pokemon. Ophiuchus. Okay, maybe Ophiuchus is close. Nope, that's a plant. Huh. Okay, what does it think I was searching? Ophitaurus? Ophiotaurus. Okay, let's see what that is. A serpent-tailed bull of Greek mythology. Okay, so it's a slightly different. Taurus. I should have guessed. Is this Percy Jackson? Okay. In Greek mythology, Ophitaurus was a creature that part bull and part serpent. Doesn't really have a photo of it, but it's got a cool mosaic, so I'm going to show you. I like that. I suppose... Oh, popular culture. That's why it showed up. I was like, Percy? Percy? Bound to Olympus? That's definitely Percy Jackson. If it was... I was like, for a second, I was like, maybe it's just the mythology. No, that would be Perseus. I love it. I love it. Okay. I keep... Oh my goodness. Oh my god. I'm not very comfortable. Okay, last one. Jaculus. Oh, Jaculus. I think I know that one. Jaculus? Is it the same? Or Jaculus? Mythical serpent or dragon. I know that because of a Harry Potter fanfiction. Because it was Snape's Patronus, or it became Snape's Patronus. This is a great drawing! I must enlarge it so you can see it properly. This is fantastic. I love it so much. Oh my god. I love old, like, illuminated manuscript art. It's just, there's something so lovely about it. It's like, we don't know very much about this creature, but we're gonna try to capture its essence. And honestly, I think they did pretty well. Also sometimes known as a javelin snake. Interesting. It looks in this picture like it's got a weird tail, like the hind legs of a rabbit, and wings instead of arms or other limbs, and then the face of a something. They're not being very clear. Anyway, thanks for coming on this journey with me. I had fun. I hope you did too. And I kicked it again. I'm sorry. It's like right in front of my legs. If I stretch out my legs as they've been wanting me to do, I might hit it. Okay. By means of these unions, the Draconic army was born. Firadel longed to do what the Nameless One had not, and conquer humankind. For more than a year, he turned the might of the Draconic army on the world. Many great realms crumbled in that time, which we call the Grief of Ages. Yet Innis, led by Glorian III, was still standing when a comet passed over the world, and the worms fell suddenly into their age-old sleep, ending the terror and bloodshed. And to this day the Nameless One remains in his tomb beneath the world, chained by the sacred blood of Berethnet. Silence. Ede folded her hands in her lap and looked straight at Sabran. That cold face was unreadable. Lady Olivia was right, the Queen said eventually. You do have the tongue of a storyteller, but I suspect you have heard too many stories and not quite enough truth. I bid you listen well at Sanctuary. She set down her goblet. I'm tired. Good night, ladies. Ede rose, as did Lenora. They curtsied and left. Her Majesty was displeased, Lenora said crossly when they were out of earshot. You told the story ever so beautifully at first. Why in the world did you say the damsel rejected the saint? No Sanctarian has ever said that. What a notion! If Her Majesty was displeased, I'm sorry for it. Now she might not invite us to sup with her again, Lenora huffed. You should have apologized, at least. Perhaps you should pray more often, to the Knight of Courtesy. Mercifully, Lenora refused to speak after that. They parted ways when Ede reached her chamber. Inside, she lit a few tapers. Her room was small, but it was her own. That's a good feeling. She unlaced her sleeves and removed the stomacher from her gown. Once she was out of it, she cast away the petticoat and the farthingale, and finally off came the corset. Farthingale. I love that. What a great word. I was considering wearing a corset today, just to keep my posture a little better. But I have like a cool corset belt, so I wore that instead. You can't really see it. Yeah, I got it from Amazon. It's cute though, and it's comfortable. The night was young. Ede took a seat at her writing table. Inside was the book she had borrowed from Trude at Zeder. She could not read any Eastern script, but it bore the mark of a Mentish printer. It must have been published before the Grief of Ages, when Eastern texts were permitted into virtudom. Trude was a blossoming heretic then, fascinated by lands where worms basked in human idolatry. Oh, that's great. At the end of the book, on a flyleaf, was a name in fresh ink, scribbled in a curling hand. Niklaus. Oh, it's all coming together! Except Tane. But we'll see, I'm sure that comes together at some point. I'm thinking Tane and Sabran, maybe. I can't remember who her love interest was, or if she had more than one. I just know there was gay, and there was dragons. That's about it. And it was a very large book, and now I know there's a second one, I think. Yeah. Why did my face suddenly turn blue? Interesting color correction we got there. I'm probably gonna edit that in iMovie, so if that looked weird, I edit the whole thing together. I don't have enough time to try to see when it does weird shit on its own. Ede thought back as she braided her hair. It was a common name in Mentendon, but there had been a Niklaus Roos at court when she had first arrived. He had excelled in anatomy at the University of Brixstad, and was rumored to practice alchemy. She remembered him as gore-bellied and cheerful. I'm assuming that means slightly overweight. No, I'm trying to highlight this word and see if you have it in the dictionary. No. New Oxford American Dictionary says no. Kind enough to acknowledge her where others did not. There had been some trouble that had concluded in his departure from Innis, but the nature of the incident was a closely guarded secret. In the silence she listened to her body. Last time the cutthroat had almost beaten her to the great bedchamber. She had not felt the flicker of her warding until it was almost too late. Magic, yes! Her Sidon was weak. The wardings she had made with it had kept Sabran safe for years, but it was finally dying, like a candle at the end of its wick. Sidon, the gift of the orange tree, a magic of fire and wood and earth. That's cool! The Inish, in their witlessness, would call it sorcery. Their ideas about magic were born of fear of what they could not understand. I'm highlighting that. It's pretty, but also because, you know. Sidon, the gift of the orange tree, was a magic of fire and wood and earth. I like that it's an orange tree. Like, it's a fruit tree. I feel like that says something about, you know, humans. It was Margaret who had once explained to her why the Inish had such a fear of magic. There was an ancient legend in these isles still told to children in the north, a figure known as the Lady of the Woods. That sounds nice. I like that. Her name had been lost to time, but the fear of her enchantments and her malice had knitted itself into the bones of the Inish and seeped through generations. Even Margaret, level-headed in most things, had been reluctant to speak of it. Ede raised a hand. She mustered her power, and golden light sputtered in her fingertips. In Lacia, when she'd been close to the orange tree, Sidon had glowed like molten glass in her veins. Oh my god, that is such a cool image! Oh my goodness! Then the prioress had sent her here to protect Sabran. Finally, we're getting part of the story! If the years of distance extinguished her power for good, the queen would always be vulnerable. Sleeping at her side would be the only way to keep her safe, and only the ladies of the bedchamber did that. Ede was a long way from being a favorite. Her restraint had cracked at supper, telling that story. She had learned to play a game over the years, to speak Inish falsehoods and utter their prayers, but telling that butchered story herself had been difficult. And though her moment of defiance might have hurt her chances of rising any further at court, she could not quite regret it. With the book and letters under one arm, Ede climbed onto the back of her chair and pressed at the strapwork on the ceiling, sliding a loose panel to one side. She stowed the items in the alcove beyond, where her longbow was hidden. When she was a maid of honor, she had buried the bow in the grounds of whatever palace the court occupied, but she was confident that even the Nighthawk could not find it in here. Once she was ready for bed, she sat at her table and wrote a message to Shassar. In code, she told him there had been another attack on Sabran and that she had stopped it. Shassar had promised he would reply to her letters, but he never had. Not once in the 8 years she had been here. She folded the letter. The master of the post would read it on behalf of the Nighthawk, but he would see nothing but courtesies. Chaucer would know the truth. A knock came at the door. Mistress Durian? Ede put on her bedgown and undid the latch. Outside was a woman wearing a badge shaped like a winged book, marking her as a retainer in the service of Satan Combe. Satan Combe? Satan? Satan. It sounds like Satan, but I don't know how else to say that. Yes? Mistress Durian, good evening. I have been sent to inform you that the principal secretary wishes to see you at 9:30 tomorrow. The girl said, I will escort you to the Alabastron Tower. Just me? Lady Catherine and Lady Margaret were both questioned today. Oh, interesting. Ede's hand tightened on the door handle. It is a questioning, then. I believe so. With the other hand, Ede drew her bedgown closer. Very well, she said. Is that all? Yes. Good night, mistress. Good night. When the retainer walked away, darkness took back the corridor. Ede shut the door and set her brow against it. She would have no sleep this night. Oh, great. I love that she's there to protect Sabran, yet she has to keep it secret at the, cost of possibly her life. It's very interesting. Would like to know more. The Rose Eternal rocked on the water, tilted by the east wind. It was this ship that would bear them across the sea to Iskalin. This, Kit declared as they walked toward it, is a fine ship. I believe that I would marry the ship were I a ship myself. Loth had to agree. Oh. The Rose was battle-scarred, but very handsome and colossal. Even on his visits to see the navy with Sabran, he had never laid eyes upon such an immense ship as this ironclad man-of-war. She boasted 108 guns, a fearsome ram and 18 sails, all emblazoned with the true sword, the emblem of virtudom. The ensign attested this was an Inish vessel, and that the actions of its crew, however morally dubious they might appear, were sanctioned by its monarchy. I like that. However morally dubious as they might appear, were sanctioned by the monarchy. A figurehead of Rosarian IV lovingly polished gaze down from the bow. Black hair and white skin, eyes as green as sea glass, her body tapered into a gilded tail. Loth remembered Queen Rosarian fondly from the years before her death. The Queen Mother, as she was known now, had often watched him play with Sabran and Rosalind in the orchards. She had been a softer woman than Sabran, quick to laugh and gamesome in a way that her daughter never was. She's a beauty, right enough, Godfred Plume said. He was the quartermaster, a dwarf of Lassian descent, not half as great a beauty as the lady who gifted her the captain mind. Oh, yes. Kit doffed his feathered hat to the figurehead. May she rest forever in the arms of the saint. Plume clicked his tongue. Queen Rosarian had a marrow's soul. She would have rested in the arms of the sea. Oh, by the saint, how beautifully put. Do merfolk really exist, incidentally? Did you ever see them when you crossed the abyss? No. Blackfish and great squid and balines I've seen, but nary a cap of the sea maid. Of a sea maid. I like that. Kit wilted. Seagulls circled in the cloud-streaked sky. The port of Perchling was ready for the worst, as always. The jetties rattled under the weight of soldiers armed with long-range muskets. Row upon row of mangonels. Don't know what that is. A military device for throwing stones and other missiles. So, kind of like a catapult, I assume, but fancier. I want to know what that looks like. That sounds cool. Mangonel. Never heard that word before. Come on, connect to the Wi-Fi, buddy. I know you can do it. Would you like to leave? Why would I leave to see this content? Yeah, I'm turning on my cellular. Mangonel. And right as I turn it on, the Wi-Fi turns back on. Mangonel. I already spelled it like twice. There we go. I spelled it wrong, but it'll probably still understand. Mangonel. Military machine used in the Middle Ages for hurling stones. Oh, so it's basically a catapult, except like fancier looking, kind of. It's got the wheels for cranking the thing. I wonder what they didn't call it. Maybe that came after. Just stuck him again. Okay. I'm hot. This is coming off. Oof. Mangonels and cannon bursting with chain shot, interspersed with stone mantlets, stood grimly on the beach. Mantlets. Look that up too. Woman's short, loose, sleeveless cloak or shawl. A bulletproof screen for a soldier. Interesting. Archers occupied the watchtowers, ready to light their beacons at the whump of wings or the sight of an enemy ship. Above it, a small city teetered. Perchling was so named because it was perched on two great shelves that jutted halfway down the cliffside, joined to the top of the cliff and to the beach by a long and drunken stair. Buildings huddled like birds on a branch. I like that. Kit had been amused by its precariousness. Saint, the architect must have been wondrous deep in the cups. But it made Loth nervous, as it would me, probably. Perchling looked as if one good squall would blow it clean into the sea. Still he drank it in, committing it to memory. This might be the last time he looked upon Innis, the only country he had ever known. They found Giant Harlow in his cabin, deep in letter writing. The man the Queen Mother had favored was not quite what Loth had imagined. He was clean-shaven, his cuffs starched, but there was a bitten edge to him. His jaw was set like a sprung trap. When they entered, he glanced up. Smallpox had pitted his deeply tanned face. Godfred. A mane of pewter hair gleamed in the sunlight. I take it these are our guests. Though his accent was firmly Innish, Kit had mentioned that Harlow came from far-off shores. Rumor had it he was descended from the people of Carmentum, once a prosperous republic in the south that had fallen in the grief of the ages. In the grief of ages. The survivors had scattered far and wide. I, Plume said, sounding jaded, Lord Ardaloth Beck and Lord Kitston Glade. Kit, came the prompt correction. Harlow put down his quill. My lords, he said coolly, welcome aboard the Rose Eternal. Thank you for finding cabins for us at such short notice, Captain Harlow, Loth said. This is a mission with the utmost importance. And the utmost secrecy, I'm told. Strange that no man but the heir to Golden Birch could attend to it. Harlow studied Loth. We set sail for the Iscally port, city of Perunta, at dusk. My crew are not accustomed to having nobles under their feet, so it might well become more comfortable for us all if you keep to your cabins while you're with us. Yes, Kit said. Good idea. I'm full of those, the captain said. Either of you been to Iscalin before? When they shook their heads, he said, Which of you offended the principal secretary? Loth sensed rather than saw Kit jab a thumb at him. Lord Arthaloth. Harlow barked a coarse laugh. And you such a respectable fellow! Clearly you displeased his grace to the point he would rather not see you alive again. The captain leaned back in his chair. I'm sure you're both aware the House of Vitalda now openly declares its draconic allegiance. Loth shivered. Knowledge that a country could, within a few years, go from following the saint to worshipping its enemy had shaken the whole of Virtudom. And I'll obey, he said. The people do as their king commands, but they suffer. We hear from the dock workers that plague is all over Iscalin. Harlow picked up his quill again. Speaking of which, my crew won't be escorting you ashore. You'll use a boat to reach Perunta. Kit swallowed. And then? You'll be met by an emissary who will take you to Karskaro. No doubt its court is free of the sickness, since nobles have the luxury of barring themselves into their fortresses when this sort of thing occurs. Ah, the irony. Harlow said, but try to avoid touching anyone. The most common strain is passed from skin to skin. How do you know this? Loth asked him. The draconic plague has not been seen in centuries. I have an interest in survival, Lord Ardeloth. Lord Ardeloth. I keep thinking sloth. I recommend you nurture one too. The captain stood. Master Plume, ready the ship. Let's see to it that my lords reach the coast in one piece, even if they do die upon arrival. Fantastic. Oh my gosh. I'm still catching up on sleep. I took a red-eye flight like Monday night, Tuesday morning. After my vacation ended, I look like I'm about to cry. Yawning always makes my eyes tear up. Anyway, I'm tired. And it is time for me to go make lunch. Alright. See you hopefully in about a week or two.